Hey, everybody, welcome in. It is a Tuesday edition of the Utopia Football Podcast. I'm Sean Pendergast, one half of Payne and Pendergast on Sports Radio 610, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. Me, an original Houston Texan, Seth Payne, getting you through the offseason here. And it's been a popping offseason here for the Texans. It has been a lot of fun, a lot of stuff going on, and we've got a ton to get to this week. In this episode. If you're new to the podcast, 2 episodes each week during the off season, Tuesday and Thursday, typically, unless things pop up. The draft, we were more than 2 episodes, and we changed the schedule around a bit that week. But most weeks, you're going to get a Tuesday edition, which is largely built around the mailbag, which you can hit me up at houmailbag@gmail.com. If you're watching on the stream, it's right there at the bottom of the screen, right there, houmailbag@gmail.com. And on Thursday, we typically have a guest. So those are the 2 off-season days. And then during the season, we're 3 episodes a week. So a lot of Texans content. Appreciate everybody continuing to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. If you have not hit the subscribe button, please do so. And you'll get the podcast sent to you automatically. It's the easiest way to do it. You'll get it wherever you get your podcasts. We continue to grow. Things continue to be very good. And this should be a fun next couple of weeks. We're going to start heading into that kind of dead zone. We'll have plenty of content for you during the summer months, rest assured, and good guests as well. But the last big thing on the offseason calendar is coming up this week, next week. I'm not sure. The league has not confirmed when they're releasing the schedule yet, but I do have thoughts on the schedule release that we'll get to in just a minute. But that'll be the last big thing. And I'm sure once they release the schedule, that'll probably be a 3-episode week. We'll preview it. We'll review it afterwards as well. This is probably the most anticipated schedule release in the history of the Houston Texans, and that's not an exaggeration. I think they could have a ton of primetime games. I think they could be traveling overseas. I think there's holiday games, all kinds of stuff. I've got my wish list I have my 5 wishes for the schedule that I'll get to in just a minute. But before we get to that, the biggest news this week is obviously the news that J.J. Watt is open to a comeback with the Texans. And more importantly, general manager Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans both understandably are open to it as well. And I guess if we just lay out the timeline here, I think the biggest thing that we need to understand is that nobody has poured any cold water on this. Nobody has said no to it. And there have been plenty of opportunities to do so. This was a big topic down the stretch last season. In 2023. And I think if you go back and look, JJ said the exact moment when he was really feeling the FOMO, the fear of missing out, of retirement, of not playing football anymore. And it was in November during week 9 when he went to visit his brother TJ, and TJ was getting ready for a Thursday night game. And JJ felt like, man, I want to go play. I want to put on the helmet and strap on the pads and go play football, and he couldn't. He retired. He wasn't on a team. And I don't think it's a coincidence that mere days later in week 11, that JJ, when he was in Houston for the Arizona Cardinals and the Texans playing in week 11, his 2 former teams, I don't think it's a coincidence that all of a sudden he is popping up on Instagram in the Texans facility, lifting weights, clearly doing football exercises, because in some of the pictures he had cleats on. Early in the season, JJ was complaining about his hotel gym not being open when he was traveling, like wherever JJ stays. I'm sure he's probably staying at whatever. If it's a Marriott, it's the nicest Marriott. But whatever hotel it was, the gym closed at like 6:30 at night, and he went online and complained on Instagram about it, and then they opened the gym for him and whatnot. If JJ is looking to come back and play football, he more likely needs to be working out in a gym at a football facility that has all the requisite machines that you need. So I think that was a tell last year that there was probably more smoke to him coming back than maybe we gave credit for. But as my co-host Seth Payne pointed out on Payne and Pendergast this morning, like when the question gets asked, what's different this time around than last year, when you retire, you leave something, there's a processing time that it takes to fill that void. And it could very well be that JJ had not fully processed it until he went to TJ's house in week 9 of November. And then at that point, he knew, okay, I need a full off season. I've got to work out like I'm going to play football. he on Saturday said that this will be the last year that he works out as if he's going to play football. So that's more tells in this whole thing that there could be some legs to it. But if we're just putting the timeline of things together here, I think there was a big part of JJ that probably wanted to get back on the field last year, that maybe he hadn't been working out last year like you would to play football until late in the season, and that he was okay with maybe being a break glass in case of emergency kind of thing for D'Amico. Now it would appear, I'm guessing that there's been more substantive conversations that have taken place about this possibly happening. I would go so far as to say maybe it's not a coincidence that the charity softball game had current Texans versus Texans legends out there, and it gives JJ an opportunity to commingle with his former teammates, which includes the head coach of the team, and potentially future teammates. I don't know if it was purposeful in that, but it's certainly a nice unintended secondary benefit of that charity softball game, the JJ Watt Charity Classic last Saturday. But if we're continuing the timeline and they took it into the offseason and the JJ is toying with the idea of coming back, this whole hornet's nest got kicked back up in my mind on the Pat McAfee show late last week on Thursday, when the McAfee crew asked Nick Caserio about a possible JJ Watt comeback. And Nick didn't dismiss it. He said it's early, it's May. The season begins in September. Would have been easy to pour cold water on it. Nick did not do that. And I'm not even saying no, but it would have been easy to not say no, but in a dismissive way. He didn't do that. Nick looked and sounded like it's a possibility. Then you fast forward 2 days later to Saturday. JJ is at his charity softball game. He's doing media before the game. He gets asked by Brandon Scott about the temptation to come back and play potentially and how you fill that competitive void in retirement. JJ talked for a minute or two about that. He went on, and it was a really good answer. But eventually, the big things that we learned were, one, he has talked to D'Amico Ryans about this last season and told D'Amico that if you absolutely need me, I'm there for you. That's big. So that's not a no. That's a yes. And then I think the other thing, which I mentioned earlier, the fact that he's working out a certain type of way where he can be ready to play football, huge tell. Absolutely huge tell. So that's Saturday. That got all kinds of run over the weekend. Now you fast forward to Monday, yesterday. We're recording this on a Tuesday. And D'Amico is at the charity golf tournament and gets asked about JJ Watt, and he goes on and on about what a great guy JJ is. And boy, I've got his number, and he's kind of chuckling about it. And I think it was Jonathan Alexander from the Chronicle asked D'Amico specifically, like, what would that look like? Like what would needing, when would you need JJ? And I'm kind of paraphrasing Jonathan's question. But the important thing was D'Amico said, I need him now. I need him now. If he's ready to go, we're ready to go. And that's the right answer, by the way. JJ Watt coming, quote, off the couch. I know he's been working out and whatnot, but JJ Watt, a year and a half removed from playing competitive football, it is better than Derek Barnett. I'll say that. Probably better than Danico Autry. And those are both good football players, but he's JJ Watt. He had 12 and a half sacks his last season in football. I don't know that he's better than Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter at this point, but all I know is that a front four on passing downs of Anderson, Watt, Autry, and Hunter, holy smokes, holy shit, right? So I think so. That's where we are right now, and I think the key things that you need to know as we sit here on Monday. One is that this is going to be a long play. Okay. I don't think JJ, if he's coming back, I don't think he's coming back for OTAs, or I don't even think he's coming back for training camp. I think if JJ Watt comes back, he's on ice till the middle of the season. So he knows that whatever he's coming back to do is somewhere that's playing significant games. I don't think he wants to come back to play for a Texans team that's 5-7 to help them sneak into the playoffs so they can get their teeth kicked in Baltimore in the divisional round. Or in the wild card round, I should say. I don't think that's the case. So I think he's going to be very purposeful, diligent about the whole thing, as he should. But I think the key things to know here are nobody has said no to this yet, nothing even close. Everybody seems to have great enthusiasm about this, from JJ to Nick Caserio to D'Amico. And those are the only front-facing people that have talked about it. I can only imagine what the conversations are like inside the building over at NRG Stadium with the possibility of JJ coming back. I can only imagine what it's going to look like and sound like on social media when they put a JJ Watt jersey on the rack with the new color rush or the battle red with the new uniforms, because that's coming. You know there's going to be an Andre Johnson and a JJ Watt uniform, and it's going to lead to all sorts of speculation. So there's that. I think, as I mentioned, the ideal situation for JJ is to come in midway through the season. So this is going to be a long play. I think everybody's in for the long haul on this one. If you want JJ to come back, you better be rooting for the Texans to get off to a great start. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you root for the Texans every week to do big things. I think the only possible holdups for this, well, there's three. One is JJ just changes his mind, or he has something happen in his life that changes. Because I think it seems like he's of mind to do it right now to play football, but maybe something in his personal life changes. Maybe Kaylee gets pregnant again or something like that. It could be any number of things. But something non-football changes his direction. Hopefully something to the good like that. Number two, maybe the Texans are not good, which could mean that he just doesn't play for the Texans, but maybe he plays somewhere else next year. That's the other big question is your desire to come back and play for the Texans, or is your desire to come back and just play football? Which makes me wonder what the list of teams would be that he'd come back and play for. Is he just ring chasing, or is he ring chasing with the Texans? Trying to finish the story here with a happy chapter when really the story looked like it had ended with a horrible chapter of JJ asking for his release. A chance to rewrite the end of that story, I think, would be amazing. And then money. Money would be the other one that could be a hang up. If JJ is looking for pro rata, the equivalent of like a 1-year, $20 million deal, he plays half the season, call it a $10 million deal to play half the season, million and change a game. I don't know what the Texans' view on that is. I don't know if that's something that Nick Caserio sees as worth eating up the cap space. The good news is that when this would all come down, if it came down during the season, then I think the team would be more inclined to splurge on something like that, the same way that teams are willing to give up multiple prospects to get a guy at the trade deadline in baseball, let's say, or willing to give up way more in draft capital at the trade deadline in football, because the percentage chance of winning a Super Bowl has already increased because, you're 9-3, you're 9-3, 12 weeks into the season. And JJ looks at it and says, yeah, this is a team that I can go win a Super Bowl here. And I can have an impact, more importantly, in winning, or just as importantly, in winning that Super Bowl. I don't think JJ just wants to be a spectator and kind of gravy train his way to a ring. I think JJ wants to be a significant part of it as well. So I think those are the only holdups, 3 holdups potentially. Something changes in his personal life. The Texans aren't good. And the money, they can't agree on money. Those are the only 3 holdups to me. So I hope it happens. It would be incredible. It would be absolutely incredible to be able to rewrite the end of a story that should have had a much more celebratory ending. I know he got inducted to the Ring of Honor and everybody's kissed and made up, and JJ's back in the fold, and he's, when he comes into town, he's in the building and he's working with Will Anderson has his number, and there's a connection between the old and the new with the Texans. All well and good. Man, a Super Bowl or a deep playoff run, even with JJ making plays, would be really, really cool. All right, so the schedule should be coming out here some point. I'm guessing sometime between this Thursday and next Thursday. This is going to be a really difficult schedule for the Texans, which makes the schedule reveal incredibly interesting to me. So I've got 5 wishes for the Houston Texans 2024 schedule. Number 1, I do not want to open the season at Kansas City. I'm seeing rumors that they could. For those who don't know, the defending Super Bowl champion always plays at home on Thursday night to open the season. By the way, shout out to Whataburger. Excellent iced coffee. I don't have any iced coffee in here, but had a chance to taste the iced coffee on Tuesday or on Monday. A little sneak preview. Thank you for that, Whataburger, and thank you for my beautiful tumbler here. If you're watching on the stream, if you're listening, you have no idea what I'm talking about. I have a kick-ass Whataburger tumbler with ice in it right now. I I do not want Kansas City in the opener. I have PTSD from 2020. I need this Texans team to get off to a fast start. I know Kansas City lost to Detroit last year at home in the season opener. I just don't want to mess with it. I really don't. I don't want to mess with Patrick Mahomes in the opener. I don't want to mess with Kansas City putting up a banner. I just don't need any of that. I don't need give me any other game and give it to me on a Sunday or in prime time or whatever. I do not want Kansas City on Thursday night. I want to get off to a fast start this season. And they can beat Kansas City. This isn't me chickening out against Kansas City. This is me trying to create the optimal scenario to have a great Texans season. And I don't know that going to Kansas City to open the season does that. I mean, mathematically, it doesn't. Like, if you're arguing that it does, then you're just being stupid. Now, if you're arguing that it would be fun, I'm here for that argument. If they open the season in Kansas City, then I will embrace it whole hog. I will be all in on Kansas City or on the Texans going to Kansas City and pulling off the upset. But I'm trying to be a pragmatist here. I'm trying to balance the entertainment value with pragmatism. That Kansas City's game is going to be fun whenever it happens, okay? And late in the season, it could be a lot of fun. Who knows? Maybe these are two teams that are playing for the 1 seed. You never know. Number 2, give me a London game. Give me an international game. There's 2 chances the Texans have at playing an international game because Minnesota and Jacksonville had both been named as hosts for a London game this year. If I had to guess, I would guess it would be Minnesota. By the way, both those teams are on the Texans' road schedule. If I had to guess, it would be Minnesota. I would say I don't know if they want to do a divisional game over in London, although the Texans did play the Jags over there back in 2019 and smoked them 26-3. That was when they just dropped like 7 into coverage against Gardner Minshew, and he's like, woo, woo, woo. Minshew's gotten better since then. But give me a London game. Give me a London. And part of that's selfish. I want to do a 5:30 in the morning pregame because I'm up anyways. Give me that 8:30 kick. Give me that post game that ends right about 1:30 or so, and I'm headed off to somewhere to watch the rest of the day football. I don't get many Sundays that I can watch the NFL slate because I'm watching the Texans. Last year, I couldn't watch any because they were all noon Sunday starts. That is one thing I'm excited about. I don't have a wish list for the number of primetime games that I want, but I am excited that the Texans will for sure be playing some primetime games this year because that means I'll get a few Sundays that I get to actually watch football. And as you'll learn if you listen to this podcast, it's really all about me. It's just the way it is. Sorry. Number 3, give me the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. I want it. I want all that smoke. I want to eat my turkey up at the station when I'm doing pregame and postgame. I want a big Thanksgiving spread. Parker Hillis, if you're listening, or Sarah Frazier, our bosses, I want a big Thanksgiving spread up at the studio so we can do pregame and watch the Detroit game, whoever they're playing, while the pregame's going on. And then the Texans smoke the Cowboys in Dallas. The Diggs brothers going at it. CJ Stroud going after his comedy partner, Micah Parsons. I am here for all of that. Give me the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. That is the one like specific like holiday annual tradition wish that I have when it comes to the NFL schedule. Give me the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Wish number 4. I want the Green Bay game to be in November. I went to Green Bay, and not that I get to go, but this is for you Texan fans out there that are going to travel. I know there's a lot of you that listen. Amy and I go to a different stadium every year during the Texans bye week. It's the only week during the season that we can spend time together on game day. And Amy's a season ticket holder for the Texans, has been since day one. And so we, for the bye week, we do what any couple would do in this situation. We go watch more football. So we go to a different stadium every year for the bye week. And we started this tradition a few years ago. And we went to Green Bay in November and watched them play Seattle. And it was amazing. It was so cool. It was great. It was snowing, but not snowing too much. And the people are out there tailgating and they're handing out bratwurst. If you tell them you're from out of town, they're giving you food and beer and everything else. I'm telling you right now, if you're a Texan fan that's listening, that's planning to travel to Green Bay, you want that game to be in not the deep winter months like December, because that's when the Texans have played there the last couple of times. But like early November, oh man, late October, late fall, early November, a little snow, little cold, crisp wind in the air. Yeah, you want that. Okay. There's a few games on the schedule this year that could potentially be cold weather games. And I don't need New England. I certainly don't need MetLife Stadium in the cold weather. That surface is already like concrete at other parts of the season. So we don't need that there. But give me Green Bay in November. And that's for you, the traveling Texan fans. Trust me, you're going to want that. The last thing, and this is a big one, and Cody Stutes brought this up when he was on with me last week, and I couldn't agree more. Do not give me one of those 2 Christmas Day games. The NFL looked at last year's ratings that they had games on Christmas Day, and they looked at the numbers. They said, wow, people sure do love watching football on Christmas Day, which is true. They're home, TV's on, they got done opening their gifts, you turn it on, you watch football. So they said, let's do 2 Christmas Day games this year. All well and good, except Christmas is on a freaking Wednesday this year. The least football-y day of the week, literally like every other day of the week other than Tuesday, and even during COVID, we got a few Tuesday games because of the Ronies. Wednesday is the least football day. Well, let's just plunk 2 games down there. So the 4 teams that play on Christmas Day will be playing on Saturday, the weekend before, okay? Which means that the week prior to the Saturday game is already a short week. You got Sunday through Saturday, so it's already a short week. And then you've got Saturday to Wednesday, which is an even shorter week. This is late in the season, too, where you could be battling for a playoff spot. So I don't want any part of that. I do not want any part of that. That just feels like a complete grenade dropped into the back of the season. I guess the one benefit is you do get a week and a half off after that Christmas game to decompress or whatever. But we're talking like week 16 at that point. So I don't want any part of that whole. We're talking 3 games in Sunday, 7. Talking 3 games in 11 days. 3 NFL football games in 11 days. So that's just it's bananas. So that's it. That's my 5 wishes for the schedule. Who knows when the schedule's coming out, but when it does come out, I'm excited for it. All right, let's get to some mailbag questions. Again, houmailbag@gmail.com. You see that right there at the bottom of the screen. That is the address to hit me with an email. Maybe I say something during this mailbag session that jogs you to want to send me something. You got the address. If you're watching on the stream, right there, right at the bottom of the screen, houmailbag@gmail.com. We'll rapid fire these. Brian Long says, a few years ago, Patrick Mahomes signed a contract extension for 10 years. Regardless of current contract status, hypothetically, who on the Texans roster would you want to sign to a 10-year extension? I believe CJ is a given, but give me 3 more. Consider age, tenure, potential, and cost. Would there be value in years 8 through 10 for those selected? That's Brian from Iowa, longtime listener, second-time emailer. I would say CJ is the only one. CJ, quarterback, is the only position I would give a 10-year contract to. I mean, the average NFL career is like 3 or 4 years. Now, do I think there's going to be Texans who play 10 years? Then, yeah, I'd almost be more inclined to give a 10. If I had to give 3, okay? If you're forcing me to give 3 more 10-year contracts, then I would say CJ aside. Honestly, just to get cute, I'll just give one to a kicker. I'll give one to Kaimi Fairbairn. And he can kick, until he's 40 years old. But honestly, I can't think of one that is going to age well. Like Tank Dell maybe, but Tank Dell is tiny. Is he going to last 10 years in the league with all the punishment that he takes? I don't know. If we had a young left tackle, okay, we had a young left tackle. Laramie Tunsil was in his 2nd year, not his. What's Laramie going into his 9th season? Then left tackle, I would give a 10-year contract to. But I wouldn't give one to Laramie now. Certainly wouldn't give one to Titus right now. If I knew more about what Juice Scruggs was going to be, then maybe, okay, I got my center for 10 years, that kind of thing. Now, here's the thing. You can't give any of these guys contract extensions till after 3 years. So you're really talking about hoping they get to a 13th year at some point, if indeed you're going to keep them for all 10 years. We know NFL contracts are, by the time you get to the last few years, they're not worth the paper they're written on. But I would say just in general, left tackle is a position that ages well, that I would go longer than it looks like the Texans are not in mind to give anything longer than a 3-year deal, 3-year extension, anything like that. The ones I would go longer on, obviously CJ is going to break the bank. CJ is going to be the highest paid player in football at some point. Left tackle is a position that I would do that at. If there were a safety, if Jalen Petrie actually played really well his first 2 years, safety is another position where I think it ages pretty well. It's a very cerebral position. I think of guys like Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu who are around for a long, long time. I'm not saying Obviously, I'm not saying Petrie is either of those guys because I just said he needed to have played well. He was bad last year at times. But safety, left tackle, um, inside linebacker, maybe D tackle, positions that age well. But like wide receiver, running back, tight end, like no. Quarterback's the only one though, man. That'll be an interesting contract when CJ's contract comes up. I'm glad we don't have to worry about it for 2 more years. Joe Q is in. Joe Q's in every week. He said, I don't understand Cody Stoots naysaying veteran safety help to save reps for a 3rd-round pick. The 3rd-round pick is obviously Kalen Bullock. Confession, I'm not a draft geek, Joe says. Question for you, what are the pros and cons of adding Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs on the back end? Bonus points if you say something positive about Lonnie Johnson or Eric Murray or MJ Stewart. Okay, look, MJ Stewart's the only one I'll stand on the table for there. He's a pretty good special teamer, and I sat with him at the gala a couple years ago, and he was a really good guy. As far as Lonnie Johnson and Eric Murray go, whatever happens, happens. Pros and cons of adding Justin Simmons or Quandre Diggs on the back end. Well, for one, both guys are better than the 3 guys that you just put in that last sentence there, Joe. They're better players, so you upgrade that room. I think especially with Simmons, you add a playmaker back there. You know, that's why they drafted Kalen Bullock. Clearly, they're looking for more plays to get made from the safety position. I think the pros are, too, you're adding some vets. You already got Jimmy Ward in that room. So you're adding a couple more veteran voices. We had Mark Schlereth a couple weeks ago on the pod. He said Justin Simmons is a great dude. So you get that. I think the cons are probably just, is that where your money is best spent at this point? We don't know what they're going to cost. What is Simmons? I mean, there's a reason they're both still sitting out there right now. They're probably waiting for more money or waiting to see what the best opportunity looks like. I think there's more pros than cons depending on what the price tag is. So it's kind of where I'm at on that. Appreciate the email as always. Dave Howard emails in houmailbag@gmail.com. Says Roger Goodell has mentioned increasing the number of games to 18. As John Harris has said, 2 preseason, 18 regular season games, and up to 4 playoff games. That's a lot of football. Here's my suggestion. Expand the rosters if they play any more games. Player safety means anything, allowing more players time off, hopefully without diluting the talent on the field. Dave suggests expanding the rosters to 60. I could see that. I could definitely see, too, maybe not expanding to 60, but letting all 53 be active on game day. I've never understood why the NFL makes it so that there's, other than to add a little strategy, I guess, but so that there's 7 inactive guys on game day. Why not let teams play all 53? And I think if you expand the schedule, that could be a possibility for sure. Also says expand the weeks in the season, not the number of games. A 16-game season played over 19 weeks would result in all teams having 3 off days. Here's the problem. It's not about the number of weeks. It is about the number of games. The games are the inventory, not the weeks. So you need more games to sell to the network. Just expanding it and giving teams more days off, that's counterproductive. So my hope is that when they go to an 18-game season, and I think they will, is that they'll go to 2 bye weeks, which I think they will. I've always thought it would be fun to have a rule where, in the spirit of player safety, to have players other than quarterback and the specialists, kicker, punter, long snapper, all the other players have to sit at least 1 game or 2 games or whatever. And so now there's some strategy involved. Now a guy gets hurt, and he misses a couple games. Well, good. There's his 2 games that he missed, as long as it's not IR or whatever, or it could be IR. Doesn't matter. As long as nobody can play more than 16 games or 17 games, and you got an 18-game season. That would get very interesting to see, especially late in the year when you've had guys that have stayed healthy all year. Is there a little strategy as to, okay, we got to sit him this week? I don't think it'll come to that. It's probably a little too much to ask coaches to deploy that much strategy. But I think there probably will need to be some sort of give back with the players that speaks to player safety. It'll probably be the extra bye week. That's what they'll sell as the give back to the players. All right, Chris in the ATL, another one of my favorites, says you mentioned all emails are wanted, including cookie recipes. I did say that on social media. I like cookie recipes. Chris sent me a cookie recipe. Said it got me thinking about the Texans offense and how they evolved from a cookie cutter system into what could be a pretty dynamic offense this year. He said before 2023, I would say their offense was an oatmeal cookie, basic and just a filler on the menu. Usually those are the untouched cookies at parties, he says. But this past season, the offense got tastier. Started as a sugar cookie, sprinkled in some creativity. I'm getting hungry reading this email. Then progressed to snickerdoodle status with spice, and then finished as a consistent fan favorite chocolate chip cookie. But this 2024 season, they've got the ability to upgrade the recipe and go full M&M cookie with crunch, color, and sweetness. Okay, this is the greatest email ever. So after my long-winded cookie analogy, who's your one M&M skill player, running back, wide receiver, tight end, outside of Stroud, you feel should make this offense a bestseller in the bakery of the NFL? I'm assuming, Chris, that you mean on the current roster. Like, who is the player that takes this offense from chocolate chip status to M&M status? A lot of people are going to say Stephon Diggs because he was the sexiest pickup of the offseason offensively. No disrespect to Joe Mixon. I think it's Tank Dell. I think Tank Dell is the X factor for everything with this offense. I think Tank Dell gets open the best. I think Tank Dell is the hardest to cover in space. I think Tank Dell has a chemistry with CJ Stroud. I also think Tank Dell is the one who's going to get probably treated as the third wheel by other teams that are going to be focusing on shutting down Diggs and Nico Collins. And I think Tank Dell is going to absolutely eat this year. I think he is going to destroy this year, as long as he's healthy. Brings me to Jenna's question. What's going on with Tank? The McNair's answer about it. Well, the first public answer we got about Tank was when Nick Caserio was on with me and Seth last week. And Nick said, Tank's doing fine. He's been in the building. Wouldn't share with us what they had talked about with Tank, he and D'Amico. Understandably so. My guess is there were probably some life lessons mixed in. Not that Tank needs them, but, the only thing Tank did wrong was he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The only advice I could give Tank, because it doesn't look like he was part of this dust-up that led to these shootout, the guns. Doesn't look like he was part of that. He was an innocent bystander. It was just, you got to pick where you're an innocent bystander better. You may have to limit the number of places, the types of places that you go. And this place he was at wasn't even a bad place. It was a private party at a nice place in Florida. D'Amico was interesting. He would not expound upon Tank's status at the golf tournament yesterday. When he was pressed on it, he would just say, Tank's fine. Tank's fine. Tank's good. Tank's going to be fine. So they're not sharing anything specific. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that, but so it sounds like he's going to be okay. Doesn't sound like he's going to be, missing week 1 or anything like that. That'll certainly be something as OTAs and minicamp unfold in the next few weeks. See where Tank is at, By the way, Chris in the ATL also asked me, can I power rank my top 5 cookies? I think I can off the top of my head. I would say number 5, macadamia nut with the vanilla chocolate chips in it, like the white chocolate chips. Number 5, snickerdoodle. Number 4, traditional sugar cookie. Just a cookie with like the granular raw sugar on it. I love those. If we're mixing Girl Scout cookies in, honestly, the lemon cookies, the lemon cookies from the Girl Scouts, if we're mixing those in, if we're just talking about your traditional bakery cookies that are like, the size of a hockey puck or bigger, then I would say number 2, chewy chocolate chip cookies, not like crummy, but like chewy. And then M&M cookies, number 1. You're absolutely right, Chris. M&M cookies are the best. The absolute best. And I don't even like sweets that much, but I can eat. I go to Kroger, I walk past those M&M cookies. I'm like, I could eat that whole thing right there. Crazy. All right, couple more here, and then we'll get out. Charles says, post-draft, what are some areas you think the team still needs to address? I don't know that there's any glaring weakness other than like defensive interior on the line is not inspiring right now. Again, maybe J.J. Watt is part of the plan to address that. I'm not saying he goes out and he plays 3 technique for 60 snaps a game, but maybe part of the solution at defensive tackle is we've got these journeyman lunch pail types that are going to play first and second down. And then on third down, I'm sure part of the plan now is to bump Danico Autry inside on third down on passing downs. But can you imagine if it was J.J. Watt and Danico Autry inside and then Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter on the outside? may God have mercy on the soul of opposing quarterbacks. So that's the only one. I don't think there's anything. I wouldn't mind seeing another running back in the building. I think they did a good job of addressing tight end in the draft with Cade Stover. So they're pretty good on offense. Defense, one of these safeties that's out there, maybe these veteran safeties. But Nick and D'Amico have done a really good job of getting this thing turned around. Nick on the personnel side, and then D'Amico and the staff developing these guys. And obviously, it's a collaboration between the two when it comes to putting the roster together. But I can't say enough good things about the job that they've done. Charles also asked, "What's my go-to drink for Cinco de Mayo?" I would say I'm not a huge margarita guy. Margaritas hit me the wrong way. It's not the tequila; it's the margarita mix. It just hits me the wrong way. So so it's not a margarita, believe it or not. Probably, I would say maybe a ranch water, a little tequila mixed in with some stuff. So that would probably be mine for Cinco de Mayo. That hits me better. That margarita mix gets me, I don't know what it is. All right, last one. This is from Mickey. Best revenge angles for the Texans based on the offseason. And I'm assuming, Mickey, what you mean, I'm going to take it this way. Like, which players on the Texans that they brought in this offseason am I most intrigued to see go against one of their old teams? I would say, oh boy, okay. I'm just going through my head, like, who are all the players they brought in? Okay, I've got this. I would say if I was power ranking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm going to do a top 5. The first one is actually a tag team of Azeez Al-Shire and Danico Autry going against the Tennessee Titans. I don't think either of them were there long enough to where they feel a certain kind of way about being a Tennessee Titan. Autry was there for, I think, 2 years, and Al-Shire was just there for one prove-it year. But the fact that there's two of them, the fact that we thieved them from the Titans and put a big dent in their defense, that would be number 5. Number 4, the biggest name of all the acquisitions for the Texans, other than Diggs, was Danielle Hunter. I just don't know that there's any animus between Danielle Hunter and the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm going to put that at number 4. I'm going to put 3. I'm going to put Jeff Okudah going against the Detroit Lions, the team that drafted him 3rd overall and then dumped him a few years later for a 5th-round pick to Atlanta. And I'm not saying he didn't deserve to be dumped. He probably did. But getting dumped for a 5th-round pick when you were picked 3rd overall, that can weigh on a man. So I'm going to go Jeff Okudah against the Lions. Number 2, you know what else sticks with you? Getting cut outright by a team. Foley Fatukasi. People forget Foley Fatukasi against the Jacksonville Jaguars twice, just like those 2 Titan guys twice. So that's number 2. And then number 1 in the league might be Stephon Diggs going against Buffalo. That game's in Houston, but that might be the number 1 revenge angle in the entire schedule this year. So those would be my 5 right there. Good questions, everybody. HOU mailbag at gmail.com. Again, a reminder to subscribe, rate, and review. Not sure who the guest is going to be on Thursday. It'll be somebody good. And we'll learn more if we get a schedule release this week or not. We shall see. But in the meantime, I appreciate everybody listening and subscribing and rating and reviewing and consuming all the Texans content that you do. We got a lot of great people out there putting a lot of great stuff out for you. And I'm very thankful that you take 38 minutes and 17 seconds out of your day to listen to my podcast, the Utopia Football Podcast. So with big thanks to Anthony Irwin, my producer, who gets the podcast out to each and every one of you. Big thanks to everybody who emailed in a question to the mailbag, HOU mailbag at gmail.com. And all of you for listening and subscribing and telling a friend as well. I am Sean Pendergast. We are out of time. I will see all of you on Thursday for the Utopia Football Podcast. Have a great week, everybody.